You've heard the phrase gut feeling, right? Well, it turns out that's not just a figure of speech. It's real. There's a powerful, incredibly complex communication network that's constantly linking your gut and your brain, and it influences everything from your mood to your thoughts. Today, we're decoding that network. We're going to explore how it works and how some very recent global events have thrown a whole new light on this amazing biological superhighway. All right, so here's our mission briefing. First, we're going to dive into the idea of the second brain, the one in your gut. Then we'll tap into the messages your microbiome is constantly sending out. After that, we'll look at how the COVID-19 pandemic became this massive, unplanned experiment on the whole system, which of course sparks some major scientific debates. And finally, we'll explore how we might actually be able to recalibrate this axis for better health. Okay, section 1, the second brain. Let's start with the absolute foundation, this communication superhighway that's really at the heart of this entire discussion. So, inside you, right this second, there's a constant silent conversation happening. And I'm not just talking about your central nervous system. This is a hidden network, and it's sending a nonstop flood of chemical information between your gut and your brain every single moment of the day. This is what scientists call the gut-brain axis. And you have to think of it like a two-way street, buzzing with chemical and electrical signals. Your gut is often called a second brain for a reason. It's lined with millions of neurons. And it's so influential. The health of your digestive system can literally shape your mood, your stress levels, and even how clearly you think. So that begs the question, right? What happens when this incredibly intricate communication network breaks down? When the signals get scrambled, the consequences can send ripples through our entire system. And the impact on our mental and emotional well-being can be pretty profound. This is the big question that researchers are racing to answer right now. Section 2, messages from the microbiome. Okay, so who are the actual messengers in this vast network? Well, they're the trillions of microorganisms living inside your gut. This inner ecosystem, your microbiome, it acts like a bustling city, constantly sending status updates and influencing the commands sent all the way up to your brain. Now, this is where things get really fascinating. This data from a 2023 review shows us just how specific this connection can be. It maps out how the balance of our gut bacteria correlates with different mental health conditions. For instance, take a look at that first row for anxiety. Researchers consistently find lower levels of certain beneficial bacteria. And as you go down the list, you see these distinct microbial patterns for depression, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. It really suggests that our mental health might have its own unique microbial signature. Section 3, the COVID-19 catalyst. And then, a global event changed the game entirely. The pandemic, as terrible as it was, became this massive, albeit unfortunate, scientific experiment. It gave researchers an unprecedented look at what happens when this gut-brain communication gets severely disrupted on a global scale. You've probably heard about long COVID, and if you look at the symptoms, so many of the most persistent ones are neurological. Study after study found that even 2 years after a severe infection, issues like depression, anxiety, insomnia, and that now infamous brain fog were incredibly common. This created a massive, urgent push to figure out the biological mechanisms driving these long-term effects. Now, this huge surge in research also naturally led to new questions, this time about the effects of vaccination. And this has created an area of intense scientific debate. To really understand the whole picture, it's absolutely essential that we look at this with a careful, impartial lens and just analyze the different signals coming from the research. And this slide right here is a perfect snapshot of the scientific process in action. On one side, you have a hypothesis from 2024. It suggests that the spike protein, the part of the virus that vaccines train our bodies to recognize, could potentially interact with our gut and cause some inflammation. But then, on the other side, you have an observational study that actually looked at the gut microbiome in vaccinated people. And what they found was that overall, it stayed stable. This is exactly how science is supposed to work. A hypothesis gets proposed, and then data is collected to see if it actually holds up. Another paper, this one from 2025, proposed a totally different potential mechanism. It zeroed in on a specific genetic sequence in the vaccine, and it suggested that this sequence might increase the risk of something called protein misfolding. Okay, so think of proteins like tiny, perfectly folded pieces of origami. Misfolding is basically when that origami gets all crumpled up, which can stop it from doing its job correctly and is linked with certain neurological diseases. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. These are proposed hypotheses. They are not settled facts. This is the messy but completely essential process of science. Researchers put ideas out there, other researchers test them, and then over time, through rigorous debate and a lot more data, a much clearer picture starts to emerge. The science here is very much still in motion. Section 5, recalibrating the system. So, okay, regardless of what's causing the disruption, whether it's stress or an infection or diet, this whole thing leads to a really powerful question. If the gut-brain axis can be thrown so far out of balance, can we intentionally bring it back? Well, research points to 3 main strategies. First up, probiotics. That's pretty straightforward, right? You're adding beneficial bacteria directly into your system. Second, you've got prebiotics. This is all about feeding the good bacteria you already have with things like dietary fiber. And third, postbiotics. This is where we use the beneficial compounds these bacteria produce, things like short-chain fatty acids, which are absolutely critical for fighting inflammation and fueling the cells in both our gut and our brain. All of this brings us to the future and what this explosive growth in research really means for how we think about our own health and well-being. Look, if there's one massive takeaway from all of this, it's that mental health is not just in your head. The gut-brain axis is definitive proof that our minds and our bodies are deeply, fundamentally intertwined. What we eat, how we live, the health of our inner ecosystem, it can all have a direct and profound impact on our mental state. And we've got to remember, this is a field that is moving at lightning speed. We are just beginning to learn the incredibly complex language of our own inner world, just starting to decode the signals that truly shape who we are. And that leaves us with one final, kind of profound thought to chew on. As we continue to map this incredible inner world of ours, we have to ask the question, is it possible that the solutions to some of our most complex mental health challenges have been right here, hidden inside us, all along?